Hello and welcome to another episode of Nothing But Love. My name is Russ Lewis and I coordinate ACON's ageing program known as the Love Project, or Living Older Visibly and Engaged. The Love Project aims to empower older LGBTQ plus communities, including people living with HIV, to lead healthy, active and more socially connected lives. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people and the people that the land that I'm coming to you from, who are the traditional owners and custodians and first peoples of our lands. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and would like to extend my respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. I'd like to thank the New South Wales Government for supporting this series of webinars. With this funding, we have been able to also coordinate with our ACON Northern Rivers team to deliver several in-person events as well as the webinar episodes. The Love Project marks its 10th anniversary this year, and what better way to celebrate than to chat with fabulous LGBTQ plus community heroes, activists, icons, performers, creatives, authors, business leaders, and so many more. Today is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to David Polson, community member and lifelong HIV activist. In 1984, David was one of the first 400 people diagnosed with HIV/AIDS in Australia. So welcome, David. Lovely to see you.
Great to be here.
Look, I want to get on to Qtopia Museum towards the later part of the chat, but I'd love to just hear a bit about your growing up. Where were you born and what was life like as a child?
Well, I was born in Christchurch, New Zealand.
Okay.
I had a very idyllic childhood until I went to high school. Unfortunately, the year I went to high school, my father got a job. He was a teacher, and he got a head teacher's job out in the country. So that meant I had to go to boarding school, and it was from the day I entered the high school to the day I left, it was hell. In the 60s in New Zealand, Christchurch, New Zealand, it was very homophobic. And I suffered, I'm not the only one. There were so many of us who've experienced this, but the homophobic bullying was dreadful.
Right. Was there other kids that you knew that were sort of hiding their sexuality, or?
Well, I found out later, yes, but no, I didn't know anyone. And apart from the physical stuff, it actually interfered with my education, because instead of being in a class listening and learning, I was running around trying to hide from the bullying and the bullies, or finding new ways of stopping the bullying. So that wasn't particularly pleasant.
Yeah.
And
did you know or have language for what being gay was in the 60s?
No. Well, Russ, that word gay didn't exist back then. Well, not even camp. It was just queer or hoofda. They were the two we used. And I knew I was attracted to males right from a very, very early age. So as a child, you don't put it into that context.
Yeah, exactly.
At school I did, and it was even tougher because I just had to hide.
Yeah.
And so my education, I had a good education, but it could have been a lot better for me.
Yeah. And how were mum and dad? Do you have siblings?
I have a sister. She's wonderful. She's gorgeous.
And how were mum and dad with your sort of coming out or revealing?
I never came out to them.
Yeah.
Simply because when I left school, I came straight to Australia. I had the opportunity to come to Australia. Hayes Gordon, the theatre director and ensemble owner, gave me a scholarship to the ensemble. So I got out of Christchurch very quickly.
Wonderful.
I didn't have to deal with it. I couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
It
Look,
was
it's not an unfamiliar story for a lot of us, is it? That we kind of leave our smaller villages, so to
yeah,
speak, and,
yeah,
and head to the big smoke to I don't know, find our tribe or for work and try to sort of find our own sort of life and
yeah. I mean, I'm not unique. It just,
yeah,
and of course there was a religious aspect there too. They were
mm,
so ultra religious. Not my parents,
yeah.
but the whole of Christchurch was really hot, really religious and
Mm.
judgmental.
Isn't it known for the amount of churches it has?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
ironically, I was molested by a priest, so
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
joined. I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow. Yeah.
but other than that, right up to high school, I had an idyllic childhood. It was
Yeah.
full of love and family. It was great,
And
and
when you came to Australia and made that breakaway, um, back then it was writing letters backwards and forwards.
oh well, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
And did you stay connected to the family?
Oh yes, if I didn't write every week, I'd get a very stern letter from my father. I haven't heard from you this week. I can only presume that you're not well.
Oh,
So, yeah, and there were a lot of letters went back and forth.
right. Did you
And
end up keeping those letters?
so, look, I kept them for about 20 years,
Yeah.
and traveling around. When I went to live to London, I lugged them over to London. When I came back to Australia, I lugged them
Yeah.
back to Australia. Then when you move flat, I lugged them. And I thought, in the end, I thought, no more lugging letters.
So how old were you when you came to Sydney?
I had just turned 18.
Right. Wow, that's a powerful, fun time to be starting your own life.
Oh, it was. It was great, but I had been at private boarding. I went to boarding school to start off with, and
Mm,
that was just gross. It was so horrible. I said to my father, "I've got to get out of here." They were all country boys, and I was the only person from the city, and they made my life just hell. So I said, "Get out." So I was put into private boarding, and I lived with, strangely, at the end, two lesbians, and they had this huge house and they had the flat downstairs, which I lived in the flat downstairs. So I was sort of already quite independent. I had to get my own lunches and do all that sort of stuff. So
yeah.
I was kind of independent before I came here. But
Yeah.
it was getting a flat and setting myself up. It was a challenge.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And yeah, brave move. So how long were you in Sydney before you went to London?
I came here in 73 and I went to London in 78.
Right. Okay. So you had a substantial kind of time to sort of settle and
Oh
I
yeah.
guess find your tribe and friends and stuff here in Sydney.
Oh, absolutely. I had a wonderful time. I got a job in the music hall at Neutral Bay, which doesn't exist anymore. It's gone.
Wow. Yeah.
Gone. Uh, and then I just realized that thirst to be an actor had just gone because I was in this big city where I had all these gay friends, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to be with them and have fun. And so that's what
Yeah.
I and it was wonderful. It was really, truly wonderful. Those sit in the 70s, it was just great times.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was the calling to go to London? Was that sort of just something that had to happen or
No, well, I'd always wanted to go to London,
yeah,
but a close friend of mine was an opera singer and she won the Sun Aria and the Shell Aria, which don't exist anymore.
right.
They're the Madame Marty Prize. Uh, she won both them and she went to London and she was so lonely, she kept on calling me reverse charges. And I thought, hell, this is getting expensive. I may as well go over there. So that's what I did. I went over and joined her and
Right.
had 3 years in London, which was terrific.
Yeah, well that's what late so 78 to about 81.
Yeah, I came back early 80, yeah, mid 81, yeah.
Right, yeah. Well, I was just a little behind you with all of that journey. I think I got to London maybe 83 to about 85.
You got there in the heavy hat Thatcher years.
The Thatcher years, I still remember sort of protesting on the streets and was it Clause 28? I think it was Clause
Yeah,
28
was
that
it clause? I'm sure it was, yes.
that was stopping any teaching, I think, of anything gay, lesbian, trans in schools. And I remember kind of protesting with sort of all the gang from like the Bronski beat and um um oh, who were the other? Oh, Pet Shop Boys were always out and about.
Yes. Oh, the Thatcher boys were wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. I look at that. Those London years were my formative years of really coming out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess, Russ, I really never came out.
Yeah,
I was just David.
yeah,
When I came here, I was in the theatre, and most people were gay. If they weren't gay, they were gay friendly.
yeah,
I never had to actually stand up and say I am gay. I just David.
yeah,
So I was very lucky.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Look at the journey for us all is so different, really. And some have to sort of stay sort of not sharing their identity, and others come out quite clearly and bravely and early, and others just get on with it.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, that was
Right.
me. I guess I was who I was, and there's an example at school. High school, the headmaster, one of our boys had been caught with another boy.
Yeah.
And the headmaster had a special assembly, and he said, "Boys, I've got some dreadful news to tell you. There was and amongst us there was a homosexual,
Homosexual.
um, and he said, these people are sick. These people are sick, and I want you, if you find anyone doing anything like this, to report it to me because they are sick and they need treatment." And I thought to myself, I'm not sick.
Yeah.
What's he talking? How dare he?
Mm,
I actually got quite annoyed with him.
mm,
But that was the prevailing atmosphere there.
wow. So you were quite confident in yourself.
Well, I think so back then.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they said things that I just knew weren't true. So
Yeah.
uh, they tried to preach a religion to me, and I thought, no, I don't believe in that. So I'm not
Yeah.
going to. I stood up.
That's good to know because like unfortunately with some of my counseling work that I do, I often have had to have conversations with people that have been very impacted and affected by faiths or beliefs and been very indoctrinated by them, and then have to sort of get out of them and realize their real world after that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I was surrounded by it.
Yeah,
They were all my family except my parents. They were just mildly so, but
yeah,
rest of the family were religious lunatics.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it was horrible. I mean, I thought,
yeah,
stop talking to me about this. I don't believe it, and I don't want to hear it.
yeah. Wow.
And I got
And,
my
and what were you doing in London when you were there?
I did temp work
Yep.
until I got a permanent job. Would you believe, sending doctors and nurses to Saudi Arabia to
Wow.
a hospital?
Right.
And I was responsible for getting all their papers into order, getting their visas and passports, and
Right. The,
so
the things we do.
things we do. I know it was amazing.
Yeah. And look, must say partying around that time in London was pretty special.
Oh yes, oh heaven.
Heaven was just
Oh,
heaven,
it was
heaven, wasn't
heaven.
it? Yeah.
Yes, it was.
It was my ultimate space. When I first walked into heaven, I thought, I've arrived.
You've arrived. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I used
Uh,
to work in a pub on Saturday nights in King's Cross.
yeah,
And the second I finished work, I was on the tube
yeah,
out to heaven. It
yeah.
was uh,
Well, I was a chef and I was working in Soho, and it was similar to that. We would finish work, we'd go to a great kind of very colourful camp bar in Soho, and then we'd all go to heaven.
yeah, it was they were fun days. They really were.
Beautiful, yeah. And I remember also trying to keep, I think, £10 in my pocket to get a cab home at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and most of the time I'd just blow it. I just end up spending that last £10 on a couple more drinks or whatever, and
Yeah.
I'd have to get the last late night bus home.
I remember one night, the very first night I went out by myself,
Yeah,
I did exactly that. I spent everything, and I
yeah.
didn't know the tubes closed at 12 o'clock.
Oh, yeah,
So I went to get a train. I had a few cents,
yeah.
pennies in my pocket. No, so I hung around with the rent boys in
That,
Leicester Square.
right.
That was a
That would be interesting. Yeah,
occasion. And
yeah,
then, of course, when the tube opened in the morning, I got the tube home. But it was great fun. I mean,
yeah.
at 18, you do these things, don't you?
Absolutely. And what brought you back to Sydney? Had you just had your time there and you were ready to come home?
No, I wasn't ready to come home, but
No.
in retrospect, I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
You could only have a 3-year visa there.
Oh, right. Yes, of course. Yeah, yeah,
I did have Irish background. My
yeah,
grandmother was Irish, but every regulation they had, I was 2 years or 3 years, either too short or too
yeah,
long. So I couldn't stay. So I thought, well, that's it. I'll come home. I
yeah.
went
That's right. Yeah,
I went home via New Zealand. I spent a few months with my parents. Then I thought, no, I can't stand being in New Zealand one day more. So
yeah,
I came back.
yeah.
And I'm
So you
glad.
arrived back in Australia 81,
Yeah.
and how old were you then?
Oh,
Uh,
what's the math?
yeah, 20.
25, 6.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's when I got back to Sydney, about 25, 26. Yeah,
Yeah. And I got a job straight away. Oh, no, I didn't. I got another temp job. I went to a temp agency and I got temp work for a
yeah,
while. Then I saw an ad in the paper for the Regent Hotel, which doesn't exist anymore. It's gone.
yeah,
So many other things.
yeah,
And I'd been a barman in a pub in London, so I thought, oh, I'll apply to be a
yeah,
barman in this new Swiss hotel.
yeah.
And I got the job. So,
Great.
and that was fantastic. And I was there from the beginning to 89, 90.
Wow.
I clawed my way to the top, well, not the top.
Yeah.
I clawed my way to running the Don Burrows Supper Club.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I do remember the Don Burrows Supper Club.
Do
Yeah,
you? Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
Yeah,
was
well, I think I got to Sydney about 85, but yeah, so yeah, I remember the Don Burrows Supper Club. Yeah.
it was
So when was your HIV diagnosis?
84.
Oh, 84. So you've been back in Sydney 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, um, I know we haven't got a lot of time, but tell me what that was like to receive the diagnosis, because leaving London in 81, it hadn't hit. We didn't know about that, but it was all hitting when I was there in 80, sort of 384.
Yeah.
So when you got back to Australia and you're sort of getting life together and moving on, what was it like to get that diagnosis in the first few years after?
Well, it hit me. I felt like when the doctor told me,
Mm,
I felt like I was falling down this I just went blank and I felt like I was falling down this big, black, bottomless pit.
yeah,
And as I was falling, my mind was going, there's disbelief, fear, anger, and it was suffocating terror. I thought, well, this is it. Because he said, then it was a death sentence. You
yeah,
told you had HIV, you were going to die.
yeah,
You're going to die either shortly or
yeah.
maybe a bit longer, but it
And
was
that's all we were seeing around us. Yeah.
that's right. And
Mm,
well, and at that stage, there hadn't been too many deaths, but there had.
mm,
So it was shocking,
mm,
but Russ, and this is the absolute truth. There was somewhere in the back of my mind, there was
yeah,
this voice that said to me, no, no, you're not going to die.
yeah,
You fight this, you're not going to die.
yeah,
So I said to my doctor, I whacked my hand down on his desk. I said, no, I'm not going to die. This isn't going to kill me.
yeah,
So I feel that I set up a really positive
Yeah,
mindset.
yeah,
That I knew that I knew that wasn't going to keep me alive. It's
yeah, yeah.
a pretty brave.
So that wasn't David Cooper that gave you the diagnosis?
No, that was Tim Barnes.
Oh, Tim Barnes. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I actually saw Tim Barnes a couple of weeks ago for the first time.
Yeah, I see
He's
him.
been around forever, but I've just never seen him. Yeah,
Yeah, well, he is strangely at the same surgery I go to now. I go to see a different doctor, Andrew,
yeah, yeah,
but I see Tim when Andrew goes away on holiday. So
yeah.
we're still in contact, and uh, he's a great guy. I liked him.
Amazing people. Yeah, amazing people that were right there in the thick of it. So when did David come on board with your treatments and care?
Well,
David Cooper.
I was working at the Regent, and because in those days, of course, you couldn't tell anyone, and
Mm,
no one at work knew. And I was offered a job down in Melbourne by the Regent of Melbourne. Very good money. They wanted me to go down and run a restaurant that was losing money. So I stupidly took it. And I got down there and it was poisonous. The atmosphere was poisonous. The reason the restaurant was losing money, the staff were all stealing.
yeah,
If came into the restaurant and I served you, uh, you'd walk out without paying because it was to put down to PR.
yeah,
So anyway, it was
mm,
horrible.
yeah.
And I went for my usual 3 monthly blood test, and my CD4 count had fallen from 880 to 220.
Wow.
And you remember that the cutoff point was 200.
Yeah,
Once you went to 200 or below, you had full blown AIDS.
yeah,
And I just freaked. So I rang Brett Tyndall. I had previously met him doing a survey on men who had just zero converted, and we became great friends. And ironically, he was the person that shot David Cooper to fame
yeah.
because he was the first person in the world they identified the seroconversion process.
Wow.
We became great friends, and he was a great support to me. So
Yeah,
when it fell to 220, I rang him. I said, Brett, what am I going to do? And he said, leave the job, leave Melbourne, come back, and I'll get you to see David.
right.
So that's when that happened. And that was in 1989, 1990. I forget.
Right.
It was a long time ago. So I went to see David, and he was very professional, very warm, but very thorough.
Yeah,
And he didn't realize that I was the person that Brett had
right. Referred.
recommended to him. And
Yeah,
I said, David, do you know I'm Polly? And he said, "Ah, Polly." And then from that moment on, everything changed.
yeah,
Because Brett had told him that my nickname was Polly.
right.
So, yeah, it was wonderful. From that moment onwards, he was just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I was diagnosed in '89 and I started with I had a lovely, lovely doctor up in Paddington that gave me the diagnosis. Um, and I'd been seeing him for a little while. And he was so caring and gentle with the revealing of that. But then I went to see Julian Gould at Albion Street, and Julian, I guess, was in the same league as David Cooper. They were right at the forefront of what was going on, and he was amazing. It was just really amazing and caring, and it must have been terrifying for them too, sort of with so many people coming in and them not kind of knowing, and all of the trials and everything that were going on.
I know. Well, the trials weren't going on when I first saw David.
Right.
He put me on AZT.
Uh,
That was my first drug,
yeah.
and that didn't work out very well.
No, it was very devastating for lots. Yeah.
Well, I was on 1,200 milligrams twice a day,
Right.
which is a lot
Yeah.
and eventually it was just too much for me. But I was on the first trial which was DDI, which was hideous.
Yeah. I was. So that must have been. 90 or 91.
91 it came out.
Right, yeah, because that's when I have a feeling I had a bit of a space where I don't think my T cells had dropped that to like 200. Um, so yeah, I think that was around the time that I probably had the first trial too.
Yeah, it was, and it was awful. Just,
Yeah,
I'll never forget those tablets, the size of them.
yeah, yeah,
Gasped when then when I tried to chew them, because they
mm,
said, well, just chew them and swallow.
yeah, yeah. And I
Awful.
remember sort of those treatments sort of having to take so many tablets and different times of the day, and some in the fridge, some out of the fridge,
Yep.
some with food, some without food.
It was it was mind blowing, wasn't it? It
Mm,
was you had to remember all those things, and you had to take.
yeah,
I remember
yeah,
being in the car with my cousin and my mother, um, up in the Blue Mountains, and I had to take my tablets by 12. And there they
mm,
were, zooming, blithely riding along, looking at the scenery. And I said, "Can we go and stop and eat?" Yeah, yeah, we'll stop shortly. I said, "No,
mm,
I would like to stop now and eat now, please." And
mm,
I couldn't dare say to them, "I've got to
mm,
take these
mm.
drugs." So it was
Yeah, I
it
know.
was hard.
Yeah, no, it was the same for me. It was sort of like you really kind of need to take them at the same time because that kind of lessened some of the reactions that you would have to them. If
Yeah.
you took them out of kilter, they just because they were so toxic, I think that's when something would happen.
And a lot happened. I'm sure that a lot happened to
Yeah,
you too.
yeah,
It,
yeah.
it,
Mm.
it
So David was really one of those ones at the very forefront of yeah, he must have had sort of quite a lot of men like you that he was caring for and trialing all these different drugs on.
he was. I don't know how many he was trialing drugs on, but
Mm,
uh, of course he was involved in the Ward 17 South. He was the principal doctor there.
yeah,
A lot of those people were trialing drugs, and
yeah,
unfortunately, a lot of them didn't make it.
yeah. When do you remember, or do you remember sort of finally hitting that combination therapy that worked?
Oh yeah, well, I actually found it quite early.
Right.
I got to undetectable
Yep.
fairly early on, a lot earlier than most people, but I was on protease inhibitors,
Yep.
and the lipodystrophy has got so bad. I got fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. I couldn't take it anymore. I just said, "David, I can't take this. I'm
Mm,
going off everything." And he said, "No, no, please don't." He begged me not to, and I didn't. Then I think it was 2015, Maraviroc, etravirine,
mm.
and uh, etravirine, Maraviroc, and raltegravir came
Oh
along.
my goodness. You're bringing back memories now. You're very, very good with remembering the names. I had a moment a few months ago where I was going through my computer and emptying things out and deleting stuff, and I came across some very careful graphs or notes of what I was taking and when
Yeah,
I had to take them and how much, how many milligrams, and I was so religious about keeping a record of everything and how things changed and the different combinations, and I'd sort of forgotten how obsessed I was with making sure I knew what was going on.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, you had to be. And
Yeah,
David, I don't think I can use this kind of language on this show, but David was very emphatic about take the tablets and don't with me.
yeah, yeah,
He's so I was petrified
yeah,
of him
yeah,
if
yeah,
I didn't take the tablets
yeah,
properly.
yeah,
So yeah, I would, and you know, I have never missed a dose.
yeah.
All those,
Yeah.
I've never missed a dose. So
I have missed some, but I still feel quite guilty if I do.
oh, I'm sure you do.
It's like And even now that things are fine and undetectable and everything like that, I still think, oh, I should have taken that dose.
Yeah. It
Did you
doesn't.
ever think that you would end up where you are now, being such an incredible spokesperson and an identity and activist for HIV? Did you ever think that's where your life was going to go with all of this?
Do you know that's really interesting, Russ? It's a question I ask myself, or I think about, or not
Yeah,
all the time, but quite often thinking, where would I be today if I wasn't HIV positive?
yeah,
I I don't know where I'd be.
yeah,
But when I got it, I knew instinctively that I had to do something. Now,
yeah,
in the initial days, I wasn't an activist.
yeah,
I didn't come out and go in big protests in front of the media. But what I did all the surveys at the behind the scenes
mm,
until the trials came along. Then I did the trials. But I think I started when I started losing so many friends. I thought, no,
mm,
bugger this. This is
yeah,
I have to stand up. I've got to do more. Not doing enough. So that's when
yeah,
I became an activist and a spokesperson and advocate for everyone. And
yeah.
but I don't
Well,
know.
that was the propellant to sort of when you were losing so many people and your journey was going reasonably well, considering, but
Yeah.
other people were were losing the battle sort of quickly. I think that's yeah,
Well,
similar to me. It was like, oh God, I can't believe that I'm living and so many others around me are dying.
that's right. Well, I'll never forget the day I went through see a Brett who was dying in Ward 17 South. He was right in that last private
Yeah,
room. I had to go past all the other beds, and at that
yeah,
time there were 6 beds to a room because they were so busy. And Russ, that day really affected me because as I walked down the corridor in those beds, nearly, I'd say 90% of the people in those beds were friends of mine,
yeah,
colleagues of mine, who I didn't know were HIV, who I didn't know was sick, and I didn't know who they were dying.
yeah.
And I found out that way, and it really hit me hard because of the secrecy. And that's when I
Mm,
decided there and then, no, there's enough of this secrecy.
yeah.
We need to talk about this. And that's
Yeah,
when
so much stigma and discrimination against kind of not being HIV and not being able to talk about it and yeah, die kind of in silence.
yeah, it was. And
Mm,
that was the second um thing that really hit me.
yeah,
Tim told me I had HIV, I was going to die. Then he said, don't tell anyone about it.
right,
Uh, it they,
yeah,
what they said that in good faith, and I think that was the right thing to say at that time.
yeah,
It was awful. I mean, remember the murders seemed to increase exponentially, the
yeah,
bashings,
yeah.
uh, people being fired,
Mm.
and all those awful things that were happening.
And it was such a contrast because we were just sort of coming out of the woods with
Oh,
with 78 and that happening earlier in America. We were starting to sort of come out of the woods, and then this sort of hit and sort of set it all back.
it just,
Um,
no, it didn't set it back, it obliterated it.
yeah, yeah,
That's what I saw. I just saw the whole thing, all that
mm,
goodwill that we'd built up,
mm,
and it just went overnight.
yeah.
It was terrible. Uh,
You mentioned Ward 17. It might be a nice segue into just having a quick chat about Qtopia Museum. And
yeah.
could you give us a bit of a quick idea of sort of how that's all come to fruition and your involvement?
Sure. Well, doing those day trials with David, we became very close friends. And when he died, I was talking to Dory, his wife, about something totally different. And we were just chatting away. And then she said, oh, Polly, it's a shame that David never got his AIDS museum up and running. I said, what? I said, I didn't know that. He said, she said, yes, he wanted an AIDS museum. So I said, Dorrie, David's going to get his AIDS museum. I'm going to make sure he does. So that was
Wow.
the seed.
And
And
how long ago was that? When did he pass?
he died in 2018.
Right, right,
Dorrie, that our conversation wasn't until 2019.
right,
So it's been no, it was 2020, sorry.
right.
When did COVID hit?
2020 was COVID. Yeah,
Okay, it was just before then.
right. Yeah,
Uh, so yeah, it was 2020. So it was now 4 years.
yeah, yeah,
It was a pretty quick thing. I got in contact with various people, including Michael Kirby,
yeah,
asked him to for his help and would he be the patron?
yeah,
He was very helpful, and
yeah,
he said to me, David, it's a great idea, but you don't stop at that. You need to include people who've been persecuted, discriminated,
mm,
and oppressed by their
yeah,
sexuality, gender, and choices. So
yeah,
I took this back to all the committee, and we agreed it had to be bigger than just an AIDS
yeah,
memorial. There had
mm,
to be an AIDS museum, but we had to do bigger things.
yeah, yeah,
So that was really the way it started. We got a group of us. Uh, there's a lovely photo of the five of us in the Oxford Hotel having lunch. There was Dorrie Cooper, a friend of mine, Peter Campbell, Ian Roberts, Ilana Cooper, and who else was it? Me, of course. It was
yeah.
me, of
You.
course. I
Yeah, yeah,
my maths. Yeah, and that was the start. That was our first meeting, and then I invited Paul Denham, who was he. I had already invited him, but he couldn't come to that first meeting. But then I invited more and more people, and we had a committee of about 10 people. Bill
yeah.
Botel joined. Then we had Greg
So it
Fisher.
got a lot of traction fairly quickly, did it? It
Oh
sort
yeah,
of, it,
absolutely.
yeah,
I wrote to Ita Buttrose and said,
yeah.
would
Wasn't she one? Hasn't she been wonderful for the
she
community?
during the AIDS crisis, she was just,
Yeah, yeah.
and so I said, would you like to be involved? And she immediately said yes. So,
Wow.
and then uh, the best thing ever happened. Uh, I was introduced by Chris Public to Larry Galbraith. Now, Larry's Clover Moore's policy advisor, senior policy advisor. And
Yeah,
Paul and I had a meeting with him one night at Paul's place over a couple of gin and tonics. And he told us about all the previous attempts there had been at a gay museum, a gay pride
mm,
center, or what there was six in all, and that all failed.
yeah, yeah,
And he told us why they failed.
yeah.
Then he said, the Lord Mayor has brought out a mayoral memo saying if it's not the council's place to run a museum, but if a group comes up and meets these criteria, we will consider putting money behind it. So we looked at this
Wow.
and
Yeah.
we set about the whole committee. It was a team effort. From
Mm,
there on, it was a team effort. We set about doing all these points, making sure we had all these points covered. I got support from all the major uh, community groups and other people as well. I made sure we had the support there. People wanted it. Uh, I spoke to the 78ers, because they were important
yeah,
to get on board.
yeah,
I spoke to everyone I could to get this,
yeah,
and Russ, I could not believe it. There was not one dissenting voice. They all wanted it, and they all said to me,
yeah.
"Great, please do it." So we had great
Mm,
support right from the start. We did all Clover's points. We took it to the council. They gave us seed money for World Pride, and
yep.
we had our two exhibits at World Pride, which were the Ward 17 South reproduction was very well received.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah, so that's how it started, and that's
Mm,
how it grew. And then in 2022 Christmas, I was sitting on my balcony. You can't see the view here, but it's nice view.
yep,
And everyone had gone away, everyone except me and Greg Fisher. So
yep,
I was going over a whole lot of things. I said, okay. I called Greg over and I said, Greg, I've reached the end of my road. I said, my skill sets. I can't lead this anymore to where we need to be. I need a CEO who has the skills to take us forward. I believe that's you. Would you be the CEO pro bono until we
mm,
can afford to pay you?
yeah,
Greg said, David, this is my passion. I'm
wow,
just so committed to this project. Absolutely.
mm,
He did for a year. He worked pro bono for a year. And
wow,
so the moment he took that over, he brought all his skills, all his accuracy,
yeah,
and it just took off. It was
yeah. And
marvelous.
you need someone like that with those skills to make it all
Absolutely.
happen. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, I put everything together.
yeah.
The what do you call it? The
All the
star.
planning and the foundations and
I
yeah,
put that together, but he was the one, and the others.
yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't just him.
yeah,
We built up a team.
yeah,
Michael Kirby had got us uh, Hall and Wilcox, the
yeah.
lawyers, pro bono lawyers. They got us the accountants. This is where my Parkinson's come in has
That's
come.
all right. Yeah.
Anyway,
So
they
it's a
got
very collaborative kind of affair
absolutely.
of sort of people helping each other, and all of those people like Kirby, and that they're extraordinary community members, and to have all of that sort of all that powerful momentum behind you, that's quite extraordinary. The museum, just for people that may not have been, is broken into several exhibitions.
Well, it's yeah. Well, we've got that actually, Russ, is the largest museum, queer museum in the world now. It's
Wow.
extraordinary. We're only
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah.
we've
And I
got
have been lucky enough to go a couple of times, but it's the sort of things that the sort of place that you can return to over and over.
yeah. Well, we've got the police station, which is the main museum.
Yep,
We've got the money now to do upstairs, to renovate upstairs for more
beautiful.
exhibition space.
Yep,
We've got the substation, which has been used as a theatre exhibition space. It's multi-purpose, and then
yeah.
we've got the toilet block, which just won the an award as the People's Choice for the best museum exhibit in Sydney. So
It's extraordinary. I was. It's really, really well done. Like it's
it
yeah.
is, isn't it? It's
If
just
you're able to get down those stairs, and not everybody probably is, but it's really quite extraordinary. I was really kind of moved and turned on and all sorts of things. I had
yeah.
all of these things going on inside.
Well, you wouldn't believe it, but women are the most most prevalent visitors. They a lot will
Yeah.
say to them, well, maybe you don't want to. We want to go down there. We want to see it. Absolutely. So yeah,
Uh,
and one Sunday, there were 20 people waiting outside to get down there before we'd.
yeah.
So yeah, so we've got these different spaces, and we will be
Yeah.
changing. We're in the process of changing different exhibits. The Ward
Yeah.
17 South is permanent. That will never go.
Yeah. It's absolutely breathtakingly moving and so powerful.
It brings back them. And the thing is,
Yeah.
those what is in that room came from the ward. I asked
Yeah.
that Shembury who was the CEO at the time. I said,
Yeah.
and could you keep because they were knocking the ward down. And I said, could you keep as many things for me as possible? And he did. He was wonderful.
Wow.
And we're in the constant we're constantly changing that to improving it, making it more uh, informative.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
more
Well, it's a credit to you to have been able to sort of really get it all going, involve all the right people, and it's going to be an extraordinary legacy for you. Really, absolutely, and something that the community can be so proud of. Really.
absolutely. It's it's
Yeah,
it's as I said, it's a team effort.
yeah,
I'm pleased that I got it going because
yeah,
if I hadn't have said if I had ignored what Dory said today, there'd be nothing.
yeah, yeah.
There'd be nothing. So
Well, look, I'm just conscious of time. We're sort of coming towards the end, but
yeah,
I know that I could talk to you for hours and hours, and I'm sure there's loads of stories. If I kept on digging, there's loads of stories. But can I ask you just a couple of questions just to kind of start to wind up? And the first one would be, what would you tell yourself? What's one thing you would tell yourself as a 21-year-old?
I think that as a 21-year-old, I would say to myself, have confidence in yourself, you can do it.
Right. Because you lacked the confidence, you think then?
I think I did actually, yes.
Yeah,
Um, it took a long time to get that confidence, and
yeah,
I think that again that came from the bullying back,
yeah,
the insecurity, the bullying, the hatred
yeah,
that all of us really
yeah.
encounter. So
Yeah, and it feels like you got some of that when you were sort of talking earlier about um, defending people that were dying.
yes, yes.
It felt like there was a bit of a surge of, no, this needs to happen. We need to talk about this. It needs to be open.
That's where I think the real floodgates for me opened.
Yeah,
S-
yeah,
Having all those people die on me and losing those people.
yeah. And the other question I was thinking about is, could you, in one word or a phrase, maybe describe your life to this point?
2 words, not boring.
Not boring, good. No, it doesn't sound like it's been boring at
No,
all. And it doesn't seem like you're slowing down at all too.
not Ross. Russ, I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
not because I get energized.
yeah, yeah,
I've got all
yeah,
these medical
yeah,
problems. People say to me, David, take it easy, we'll
yeah,
sit down. Yeah, I'm physically slower than I used to be, but
yeah,
I get energized. If I don't do something, I really feel
yeah,
down. But the moment
yeah,
I do
yeah,
things, I'm energized. It's wonderful.
yeah. Oh no, I can tell. It's sort of infectious, the sort of the energy that you have. So I have nothing but love for you. I'm sure the community has nothing but love for you. I really have enjoyed having a chat. I really appreciate you sort of being so open and honest. I know you are, but it's wonderful kind of to hear some of those stories. And um, yeah, thank you very much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ross. And I love you too, and I love what you're doing. You're doing a really tremendous job that older gay people need, and we really appreciate it. All of us really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Oh, it's very much appreciated. I love being in this space, and I hope it sort of comes out as much as sort of how it does with your work.
It does. It's wonderful. So thank you as well.
Great. All right. Well, we'll call it quits there. We'll have an update of the next guest coming up next month. But until then, take very good care, David, and everyone that's been joining us. And as usual, I'll be sending out a quick evaluation tomorrow, and also this will be up on the Acon YouTube website in the channel in the next couple of days as well. So, thanks, David. Take good care.
Bye bye.
Bye for now.